So Ray, we're obviously coming up to the anniversary of one of the darkest days in United's history, probably one of the darkest days in English football's history, the Munich air disaster. Now, as a young United fan, I've heard stories about these players and about the awful tragedy that happened.
Yeah.
But as you, as someone who was actually there and who went through it,
Yeah.
what memory do you have of that day?
I was going to Zavarian College in Russia at the time, and I lived in Collyhurst, so I used to get the bus into town and then a bus up to Collyhurst. And when I got the bus in Piccadilly, the billboards were up saying United plane crash, and it was just people were just standing around, and they had the paper. And that time the news wasn't as quick as it is these days, so it was basically a fact that the plane actually crashed, but nobody knew any more than that at that time. And it was only as the day went on and you were starting to get the broadcasts that you realised what had really happened. I mean, it was just horrific. My daughter used to say to me when she watched things that happened in my youth and my younger days, was everything in black and white then, Dad? Because there's no coloured film or nothing.
Yeah.
Well, that day for me will always be black and white.
Black and white.
There was no colour that day, nothing. There was no colour probably 3 or 4 days afterwards. I know it hit my old fella really, really hard. He was a big United fan. And it hit a lot of people really hard. Even now I start to get a bit that way about it. But it was so personal.
Of course.
Because we knew those players. You know, we'd been with them, we'd met them, we'd seen them out with the playing field, we'd seen them in normal circumstances, we'd stood next to them. So we had a personal bond with them. Do you understand what I mean?
Yeah.
And I'm getting a bit upset there about that because it was a personal event.
It's something that I can't even begin to imagine, because obviously the United team that I grew up with, and if that would happen to me, I couldn't even imagine the implications that it would have on me personally, and obviously United fans all around the world. The team itself, every single player was brilliant. However, when people talk about the crash and players that were lost, I, as a young United fan, always get told stories about one particular player who died, and that was Big Dunk. Do you have any memories about Duncan Edwards and just how good he was?
Well, Duncan Edwards, you know, his record speaks for itself. He played for England when he was less than 18, and he played up in Scotland, played against Germany, played against the best teams in the world. And he also played United youth team at the same time, so that's the kind of player Duncan Edwards was. He also done national service. So it's all that. You never imagine that in this day and age. But that was how it was so normal. Do you understand what I mean? That there were players, and they played for Man United, but they were normal people to us. So when they died, it was personal. As I say, I can't, stress to you how personal it was for us, for that team today. Anybody in my generation would tell you the same thing. They were our personal boys, as it were. Even though they were older than us, for me, it was our team. It didn't just affect United, it affected the Irish team, it affected the English national team, Scott, anybody. It affected them all because they were all at the top of the game. Those lads were all at the top of the game. And Edwards is like the figurehead, because Edwards was probably the youngest one, and he was the one that everybody idolised because he was just a mammoth. Duncan Edwards is a mammoth player. Bobby Charlton, all these years later said he's the best he's ever seen. Now nobody's seen more players or played against more players than Bobby Charlton. So if he says that's got to be good enough for anybody.
If he was a footballer nowadays, what type of footballer was he? Like, was he a hard sort of player, or was he a skillful player? Or, as I've been told, he had everything.
He was all those things and more. He was everything. Wherever he wanted to play him, he would play. I think it was Murphy was quoted at one time. You probably read the same statement when he was a kid. When he played in the youth team, everybody used to give it to Edwards. That was all he was doing, give it Edwards. And Murphy at one time sent him out to play the particular game, and he said, listen, you're all good players in your own right. You don't need to keep giving it to Duncan Edwards. Go and do your own thing. And I think United were 2 down about 10 minutes. So Murphy, the rest of the match, was shouting, give it to Edwards, give it to Edwards. And they won the game 4-2. But that's the way Edwards was, and that's the way he came all through his progression through United, he was, as soon as you landed, it was just, this is a special. It was like probably in comparison to Best when Best first arrived, and you recognise straight away, that's a player.
In a way, the team died, but what they had done and the foundations that were laid and everything that had happened after the disaster, the way that United rebuilt, we wouldn't be anywhere near where we are today in terms of success without those lads.
No, you wouldn't.
No.
But bear in mind, but prior to that, you know, Busby had built one great team when he first went to Old Trafford after the war. He had a cup-winning team, he had a couple of league titles, and there was runners up, and all the time. And similar to Fergie, he was gathering these young lads together, and he got a nucleus again. You got Duncan Edwards, David Pegg, Tommy Taylor, he bought him young, Eddie Coleman, players like that, and they were all, as I say, young lads. And they all came together as a one with a couple of old heads at the back. Roger was like 26 at that time, still a young player. But the nucleus was young boys, that's why they were always the Busby Babes. And that was why people sort of grew up with them. I was growing up with those players. I mean, I actually stood next to Tommy Taylor, Duncan Edwards and Bobby Charlton just a midweek game up at the old Newton Heath Local, which used to be our ground, but used to play midweek games there. And a particular day we knew there was Smithfield Market were playing, I think it was the Police, that was like the league on a Wednesday afternoon. So we walked up from St Pat's School walked up Oldham Road, probably about 3 or 4 miles. We got to within touching distance of the ground, and the 82 bus used to stop outside the ground from Charlton, and the bus stopped and these three got off. These three
just normal
superstars got off. Just normal. I mean, they knew they were superstars because they had a mac on, and they had a belt, and they had a hat and all that stuff, and they were smoking fags.
Right, yeah.
So they got to be superstars, these three, and I just stood by them and just in awe of these people. They were just stood watching a game, and they were talking.
Yeah, there's no sort of like.
There's no
egos, I guess.
No entourage.
No
get back and all that stuff. You know, none of that. But they were just stood and that. So when Munich, you had Munich, you know, two of those 3 lads died. So for me, it was something had gone out of my life.